Hi everyone, this is Dr. Chhoda and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. I hope my community is having a peaceful, relaxed Sunday. I want to give you the important news reports for the day and I want my community to understand what lies ahead and what we can expect ahead. In this video, I'm going to cover the fact that millions of workers are actually poised to lose access to paid leave as the pandemic surges across the country. There was actually a provision within the CARES Act that actually provided paid sick leave. Unfortunately, this provision is going away. Now, this is completely separate from the unemployment benefits, so I'll be covering that in this video. Also, unfortunately, decades of gains in US wealth, in other words, the gap between the rich and the poor that was being closed prior to this pandemic, decades of gains are actually at risk of being wiped out because this pandemic has disproportionately impacted the most vulnerable amongst us. Just some mind-blowing numbers from Bloomberg that I'll cover in this video. Also, this is interesting. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell finally, in recognizing how serious this pandemic is, has actually suspended in-person GOP lunches. Now, are they likely to talk about stimulus next week? Probably. But this is the first sort of formal recognition that this pandemic is actually starting to break up, if you will, the format in which the Senate works, because the Senate actually gets a lot of work done during these lunches. Now, what was interesting also today was that President-elect Biden actually suffered a sprained foot while playing with his dog today, and he was at his Delaware vacation home yesterday actually, and he bought two German Shepherds. He is actually going to bring two German Shepherds and one cat to the White House, and he actually sprained his foot. I'll let you know as soon as we find out more. And here's another thing that's super interesting. Biden is actually building an all-female White House senior communications team. So I thought that was a very interesting piece of news as well. We'll be covering that. Wisconsin has reported their results, and Wisconsin's Dane County confirmed Biden's lead after the recount. So the president, this is not good news for Team Trump. Speaking of Team Trump, President Trump said today in an interview with Fox that it'll be hard for the election suits to actually reach the Supreme Court. By the way, this is not consistent with what his lawyers have said, that, hey, we'll go to the Supreme Court. President Trump basically seems to acknowledge the fact that the Supreme Court might not even hear this. I'll give you some data about whether the Supreme Court is likely to take on the election vote challenge case or not. And finally, the president also said that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, was, I quote, missing in action on alleged voter fraud. President Trump said he has not seen anything from the DOJ or FBI on investigating the 2020 election. So it doesn't sound like that's really going Trump's way, but let's jump right in and let's give you the news. So, by the way, we'll provide you with a link to all of our resources in the description section below, so you can definitely check them out. Millions of workers are poised to leave access to paid leave as this pandemic surges across the country. Now, keep in mind, as many as 87 million people in both the public sector and the private sector could lose access to federally mandated benefits at the end of the year, unless there is congressional legislation for extension. So, tens of millions of workers, employees across the country, are likely to lose access to federally mandated, this is something that the government has mandated, paid sick leave and family leave at the end of December, and this is going to make things even harder for millions of our fellow Americans. Families First, by the way, is a relief package that was enacted in March as part of the CARES Act, required many employers to provide workers with 2 weeks of COVID-related sick leave at full pay, 2 weeks of COVID-related sick leave at full pay, and up to 12 weeks of family and medical leave to care for family members at 2/3 pay. So 2 weeks of COVID-related sick pay and up to 12 weeks of family and medical leave to care for family members at 2/3 pay. Now, it was estimated that half of the US workforce was covered, but these provisions, which by the way cost $105 billion for the US government, are slated to expire at the end of the year, along with the PUA program, the PUC program. I've done other detailed videos talking about which programs are expiring. So this means that as many as 87 million individuals, it's hard for me to even report numbers like this, as many as 87 million individuals in the public sector and the private sector could be deprived of this benefit. Just incredible. Also, this was reported by Bloomberg. Again, we'll provide you with a link to all of our articles in the description section below. Decades of gains over US poverty are at risk of being wiped out, and basically individuals who are starting to get out of the cycle of poverty, I've covered the cycle of poverty elsewhere on my channel, but individuals who are starting to get out of the cycle of poverty are now being pushed back into the cycle of poverty. The stimulus is more important for these individuals. Unemployment benefits are important for individuals who need help the most. But unfortunately, decades of gains are at risk of essentially being wiped out. Now, keep in mind the $600 a week federal unemployment booster, which expired at the end of July. The $1,200 stimulus check was very crucial for those who are the most vulnerable amongst us. But now, having that kind of assistance to poorer families is going to be essential to make sure that the pandemic allows the country to recover, not just the rich, not just the people at the upper part of the K-shaped recovery to recover. So, unfortunately, that is where things are. Like I said, McConnell has suspended, shifting gears to the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has suspended in-person GOP lunches because a lot of people, in the Senate are contracting COVID. Just unfortunate. I mean, the Senate has seen many people get sick with COVID. Rick Scott from Florida, Chuck Grassley from Iowa tested positive in recent weeks. Kelly Loeffler from Georgia, by the way, who's going to be in the middle of a very competitive Georgia Senate runoff race on the 5th of January, announced she'd received a positive test and then she announced she was testing negative. So there's a lot of concern there. Speaking of concern, shifting gears to President-elect Biden, he suffered a sprained foot while playing with his dog. And what happened was he basically had a sprained foot with no obvious fracture evident from an initial x-ray, and he was playing with Major, one of his dogs, and he'll get an additional CT scan, and we'll probably find out very soon what the results of that are. This incident actually occurred yesterday, Saturday, while President-elect Biden was spending Thanksgiving weekend with his family in Delaware, where they have a vacation home. And, the transition team for President-elect Biden issued a statement saying he would see an orthopedist on today, out of an abundance of caution. Now, keep in mind, Biden is 78 years old, and he's set to become the 46th president of the United States on the 20th of January. And the Bidens have 2 German shepherds and a cat. They actually plan to acquire a cat, and they plan on bringing these pets to the White House. Now, speaking of the Biden team, the Biden transition team has built an all-female White House senior communications team, which is super interesting, and it's gonna be interesting to see this communication team. So in the communication team, we have Jen Psaki, who's going to be the face of the administration's White House press secretary. She was a former Obama White House communications director and State Department spokeswoman. And we have Kate Bedingfield. I've talked about Kate before, deputy campaign manager and communications director during 2020 campaign, will be the White House communications director. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. Speaking of interesting, Wisconsin's Dane County affirmed the win for President-elect Biden after the recount. In fact, after the recount, there was almost no change in results. Biden picked up a few more votes. So the Trump, President Trump's team has been essentially continuing to say that, this is a rigged election and so on. And the President Trump's campaign requested recounts in the state's 2 most populous counties in Wisconsin, and that did not move the needle on vote counts. And so that is where things stand as far as Wisconsin's concerned. Now, President Trump was actually interviewed today, and he did say that President Trump said some interesting things. He said he's ashamed that he endorsed Georgia Governor Kemp because he's no longer a fan of Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. And when he was asked about whether, the fight to overturn the elections could get to the Supreme Court, this is interesting. The president said it probably won't reach the Supreme Court. And I'm quoting the president now. It's very hard to get a case to the Supreme Court. I probably can't get a case. And the president said this on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox. And he said that, he continued to say that there was, a problem with the results in the election, that there was a lot of voter fraud. And he did signal that his legal options would be running out as per Bloomberg. I'll provide you with a link to the article in the description section below. But he did suggest, and I quote, that there was no drop-dead date for his challenges to finally come to an end. So the president seems to want to continue the legal challenges. And let's be clear, President Trump's team has suffered a lot of setbacks, and several states have issued judgments. Judges have issued judgments that haven't helped the Trump campaign. And this is what the president said: "I've got the best Supreme Court advocates, lawyers that want to argue the case if it gets there, but they said it's very hard to get a case up there." That's what the president said. And again, very interesting. One of President Trump's legal advisors, Jenna Ellis, said as recently as Friday, 48 hours ago, that they were headed to the Supreme Court after their latest setback in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's where things stand. And it was a pretty lengthy interview today with Fox, and the president, continued to allege fraud with mail-in ballots, voting machines, and other methods. And the show's host, Maria Bartiromo, essentially, asked the president to share all of his thoughts, which he did. And so, unfortunately, the president is, not very supportive of certain individuals, such as the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, and Governor Brian Kemp in the state of Georgia. And the two men have certified President Trump's defeat in the state. And President Trump said, "I'm ashamed that I endorsed him." That's what the president said of Brian Kemp. Now, keep in mind, the president had endorsed Raffensperger in 2018 as someone who would be, I quote, a fantastic Secretary of State. On Thursday, 3 days ago, the president called the Republican Raffensperger, who's the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, who's the Secretary of State. The president called him an enemy of the people. And Brad Raffensperger has said that I, voted for Trump, my family voted for the president, and he threw me under the bus. So that's where things are happening. And President Trump, and here's an article on Fox News, we'll provide you with a link in the description section below. The president said the DOJ is missing in action on alleged election fraud. And he said that the Department of Justice is missing in action. He said, this is the president saying, you would think if you're the FBI or the Department of Justice, this is the biggest thing you could be looking at. Where are they? I've not seen anything. They just keep moving along and go on to the next president. That is what President Trump said. President Trump has not conceded to President-elect Biden. And, and he said that he believes the election was a fraud, adding that he thinks it was rigged. And he said, I ask, are they DOJ and FBI looking at it? Everyone says, yes, they're looking at it. Look, where are they? Where are all these people? That's what the president said. And he said they lied to Congress, they lied, they leaked, they spied on our campaign. The president was presumably, according to Fox News, referring to former FBI Director James Comey, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and all of these other individuals that have been in some rather controversial exchanges with the administration. And so the president also slammed the machines from Dominion voting systems. The president said, and I'm quoting the president, all I can say is I haven't heard with all of the fraud that's taken place. Nobody has come to me and said, oh, the FBI has nabbed, the people that are doing this game. The FBI is looking at Dominion, which nobody even knows where they're based, which nobody even knows where the votes are counted. That's what the president said. So, Sidney Powell, I've covered Sidney Powell before. Sidney Powell's a rather interesting character. You can look her up, and she has essentially questioned the validity of the election also. And the president said, what's going on in this country is not to be believed. He went on to ask, why isn't the FBI all over the place? They're not, it's an incredible thing, they're not, and it's an embarrassment to our country. That's what the president said. So that's where things stand, everybody. This was my update for our community in my one-take video. I tried to knock it out without any edits or anything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new. My name is Dr. Chhoda with Ignition Time. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please consider clicking the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. That would mean a lot to me. If you don't know anything about me, please check out my video. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. Once again, I appreciate you watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.